All right, guys, in today's video, you're going to meet my friend Dan Parker. In 2012, he wrecked his pro modified car and tragically went blind. This is his story. This is his story of overcoming. This is his story of all the downs that happened, and this is the story of the ups. He is the world's fastest blind man. If you want to know more about Dan, go to theblindmachinist.com. He makes these pins by hand in a lathe, in a mill. So if you could go support Dan, that would be so awesome, and go buy one of his pins to help him keep racing, help his foundation. He just recently started a nonprofit. He's got so much going on in his life. He's such a highly motivated person, and I hope that by you watching this video, it motivates you. Dan's motto is, you can either make it happen or you can make excuses. Let's jump into today's video. All right. So today, we haven't done a podcast in a really long time. My friend Dan, you want to move that table a little bit, Dan?
No, you're good. You're good.
I'll give you a little more space.
You're good.
You got to be able to cross your legs if you want, you know. So today, I'm hanging out with my friend Dan. I've known Dan a little bit of time just on the world of Facebook. And we've been wanting to sit down together. And I think you guys will get a lot from this. You're going to hear a lot of Dan's story. Where he came from, what he's accomplished in his life, what he's continuing to accomplish in his life, despite some adversity. So I think that you're going to get a whole lot about this. He's got a bunch of different things that he does. There's a lot of things that he stands for that we really align on. So you would agree we've been really wanting to sit down and do this for a long time.
Yeah, about a year or so we've been talking back and forth. Finally everything fell into place to make it happen.
Yeah. So we'll just jump right into it, and so that you guys can get to know Dan. Dan can tell you his story a little bit, but you just can't see anymore. That's the big problem in the moment, right?
Yep.
Well, just something to overcome. So how'd that happen, Dan?
So I had a chassis shop like you. My young age. I'm the 2005 ADRL Pro Nitrous World Champion. And March 31st, 2012, we were testing a brand new Fulton 864. Second pass on the car, I had a 940 760 foot. I took it to the 330. And on the third pass, we wanted to take it to the 8th mile mark. So I went 407 at 175. I was already in trouble. When I went through the 8th mile mark, it was already on its side. The throttle had hung wide open. The car went from the left lane all the way across. I barely missed David Reese. He red lighted, and if he wouldn't red lighted bad, I would have hit him.
I didn't realize that David was in the other lane.
Yep, he went 409 and I went 407. And I hit the poured concrete wall at steel, tore a section out of the wall. Then the car went flipping and tumbling and just completely broke apart. There was nothing left forward of my feet. No motor, transmission, firewall, dash bar, steering column, struts, anything. I was knocked unconscious when they got to me. They got me out of the car, had broke ribs, collapsed lung. This whole right arm was just going everywhere but right. I was very combative, after, everything. So they tried to life flight me, but there was a bad storm in between the University of Alabama Hospital and the track. So they had to put me in an ambulance. And they did something I never heard of before. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Jennifer, was riding shotgun, and I was in such bad shape, they called ahead and had another ambulance meet my ambulance on the side of the highway so that EMT could get in my ambulance to help my EMT keep me alive until I got to UAB. They told everybody, the family, that, listen, we won't know how bad he is till he actually wakes up, but we're going to have to induce him into a coma. Had an infection in this, I have a skin graft site in this right armpit, and they couldn't do the surgery on the arm, so I was in total in a coma for 2 weeks. But during the time I was in a coma, they didn't tend to my brain pressures. My brain had swelled, compressed my optic nerve, and I woke up to my new world of darkness. I'm 100% blind for life.
So it was the swelling in the brain that actually made you. I got you.
Yep.
Wow. What that car you built? That was your. No.
No, it was a Haas 63 Corvette.
Okay, gotcha. And you had always been back then. Pro mod was nitrous.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. And that's all. I tuned on that stuff, but all I ever driven was nitrous pro mods.
And that's when men were men, and you had a clutch
That's
also.
right. Yeah. Three pedals, not the third pedal wasn't the mercy brake. Yeah.
Yeah. So that initial experience, how much of that do you remember?
I remember nothing of the wreck. My earliest memories, my sister and Jennifer, I would be laying in the hospital bed, and if somebody walked up and they said something, it would startle me because I couldn't see them. But I was so doped up on all the morphine and everything else, I didn't realize what was happening. And so they called the doctor. The next day, an ophthalmologist come in, and he put my head in that little machine, and he shined the lights. And he said, "What do you see?" I said, "I don't see anything." And I said, "I can feel the heat, but I don't see anything." So he took my head out of the machine. He says, "I can see your optic nerve is dead. You're 100% blind for life." So I had a breakdown. I told Jennifer, she reminds me of this. I always wore Oakley prescription glasses. My set was gone. So one of the trips home, Jennifer brought a pair of glasses because she didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And I said, "I just need my glasses." So anyway, I put my glasses on. Of course, that didn't help. And then I broke down at that moment. I knew my whole world was over with as I knew it. I lost everything.
That man, I couldn't imagine that feeling of just trying to see, something that you're so used to, almost take for granted, right?
Yeah.
That we can see every day, right? What that process of figuring that out, and then how long did it? I'm sure it didn't take you very long to figure out. Well, you have to move forward, but you probably sat in that space a little bit, huh?
Well, my immediate thought was, when that doctor left that room that day, I told Jennifer, my exact words with her was, because she had only been living with me a few months. We've been dating over a year, and she worked for Steve Johnson, Pro Stock motorcycle racer. And I told her, I said, "Just go to the house, get whatever you want, move back to Birmingham, and forget about me." I said, because my exact words with her was, "I have ruined my life. Don't ruin yours trying to do the right thing by me." And because I knew as soon as possible, as soon as I could get home to my shop, I could commit suicide. There was not even a question. Magically, whenever I got home, all my guns had disappeared. But, I knew at that moment that I wasn't going to be a burden to anybody. I rolled the dice. I came up craps. And so the easiest thing for me to do was just to end my life.
Yeah. Did you have, you and I talk about Jesus and God a lot, did you have a relationship then?
No, I always called myself a Christian. I live by Christian values. I'm 55 years old. I've never drank a beer. I've never smoked a cigarette, a joint, or anything. I always try to live by Christian values, but yet I wasn't somebody that went to church. And I'm going to say I really didn't have a relationship with God because I didn't know how to have a relationship with God. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know, I have severe ADD. I can't.
I think
read.
We all do.
Yeah, I can't read something. So I can't. I felt as a failure as a Christian because I couldn't recite a verse. Here's what I'm trying to say. That's just the way I felt.
Yeah.
And so that told me that I didn't have enough strength there or something. But I believe in God and try to do right in the world. Is what I'm trying to say. But so that's where I was at that moment.
So from that moment of, and I appreciate the real honesty. I think that's what people need to hear. It's like, what I mean? Like you couldn't get no lower, really.
Oh yeah.
Right, like that.
Oh, it gets a little worse.
All right. Well, take me through that.
So, when I come home, I had a small chassis shop. I had the pressures of, trying to get some customers' cars finished. This right arm was stuck straight. I couldn't break an egg with my hand.
So you go home and you're about to determine, I'm just going to at least finish these customer cars that I can't see and my arm don't work.
Yeah, and so it was rough, and I had to go to hand therapy twice a week, back therapy twice a week, and then about the 6-month mark, they told me that they could reconstruct the elbow, just allow it to bend, and And about that time, so my brother drank himself to death in 2009. And just 6 months before my wreck, I watched my mama take her last breath from pancreatic cancer. Well, Chris had always told me he loved the Bonneville Salt Flats. That's my brother. And he was just so talented and so smart, but yet alcohol was his demon.
Yeah.
And well, we lived out in the country. We lived about 300 feet from the road. And when I bought the house, I had a narrow driveway. Well, I had to cut this embankment back so I could get the big rigs in. And it was all gravel. So my brick mailbox was perfectly in line with that embankment. So I tricked Jennifer into teaching me how to go get the mail. She didn't know what was going on. But so my choice was that we had logging trucks that rode by every day. So what I was going to do, my way out, was I was going to go get the mail walking from a logging truck. This is still 6 months in.
Yeah.
And so, I had an exit plan, and I was getting pretty close. And then, give me a minute.
You're good.
I went to bed one night, thinking about my brother and my mom, and if I would see them again.
Yeah.
And I woke up from the most vivid dream imaginable that I would build a motorcycle and become the first blind man to race Bonneville. I had no idea if a blind man had ever raced Bonneville.
Yeah.
I didn't know. As now we know, when God gives you a purpose, He don't tell you the how.
Yeah.
He don't tell you the when. He just gives you the purpose. So at that moment, my life was saved because He gave me a purpose. And
You had that dream, and
I had that dream. I never went, but this was about 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, then my mind was wide open. I never went back to sleep. Jennifer woke up about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I told her, I said, well, I know what I'm going to do. And she said, what? I said, I'm going to build a motorcycle, be the first blind man to race Bonneville. And she said, okay. And so she knew, where I was at, mentally. And she said, I'd rather him die doing what he loves than,
walk out front one of them trucks out there.
that's right. And so that purpose changed my life. It saved my life. And it wasn't easy. When I announced it to my family and people, I tell everybody that went about like a whoopee cushion in church. My best friends were making fun of me. Later, they would steal from me. My father told me that, all I was doing is proving I could blow a bunch of money up a hog's ass and waste everybody's time. But I didn't veer. I wouldn't buckle. I wouldn't veer. And so I was blessed beyond comprehension. So before I went blind, a friend of mine, Patrick Johnson, is an engineer at Boeing Phantom Works. He was partnered with Alan Dudley. They were MFI Electronics. They were some of the very first people to use electronic fuel injection with alcohol turbos. We were putting 3 injectors in runners back then. Of course, we know nowadays still not enough. And but I called Patrick. I said, the smartest person I know. So I called Patrick. I said, I got this dream. I want to build this motorcycle. I said, but I need to know a way of how to go straight. Some kind of audible feedback. And Patrick's exact words were, that's easy. If that's all you're worried about, start building your motorcycle. So I called the Bub Motorcycle Speed Trials. I tell everybody, I think they thought I was prank calling the first time I called, told them what I want to do. And Dennis Manning, we had a good conversation. And he says, I won't even consider it unless you make it a 3-wheeler to take balance out of the equation. I said, okay, your football field, your rules, no problem. So I had my chassis jig where I built the motorcycles for Star Race, and
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I built the 3 Extreme Pro Mod motorcycles that Matt Smith raced for Alan Nobby.
Yeah.
The drag baggers, I built those chassis, and I built 2 Suzuki chassis. And ironically, while I was in the hospital, Japel, one of the guys, won his first 80-yard race while I was in the hospital, and I got to listen to it.
That's awesome.
But so I started, building the bike.
Off of the jig that you
off
had.
the jig I had. And Jennifer started me a Facebook page. Back then it was called Dan's Quest for the Salt. And man, just people, Tom from Mickey Thompson donated me 3 front tires off Pro Stock Motorcycle. And then this is how God works. I called a friend of mine, one of my childhood best friends. He owns a motorcycle shop. And originally he gave me a KX50 because I wanted something small because I knew if I tried to do something fast that nobody's going to allow me to race. So I wanted to make it a 50. Well, he gave me a KX50. Well, then through connections, I got in touch with a guy in California that raced 50 cc's at Bonneville. He said, no, you don't want that. You want an Aprilia RS50. They got the best platform. So I called Frankie back. I said, this guy said, I need a Aprilia RS50. He goes, I got one of them too. He says, a friend of mine's a painter, and he went to go restore a rental house. It was one in the shop that was wrecked, and they gave it to him. So Frankie gave me the Aprilia, stripped it down. George Starr, they helped me with some sponsorship. Paul Gast helped me, Fast by Gas, with some stuff. It just started coming into play, and I didn't even have permission to race it. But I just knew this was my purpose. I'd figure that out down the road. And I had the motorcycle about 75% finished when Jennifer and I was eating Mexican and one night, and they called and they said, all right, this is the rules. We're going to give you a chance. You're going to have to show video footage of you riding before you get here. When you get here, we're going to set up a temporary course, and you're going to have to demonstrate to the officials that you can do this safely, you can get on and off the salt, and everything else. I said, listen, I want to be treated as a racer. I don't want to be treated as a sideshow. If I can't do what y'all want, I don't deserve to race. And 3 weeks before we left for Bonneville in 2013, so the National Federation of Blind came on board to sponsor me. They helped me get my leathers and some other stuff. And so 3 weeks before Bonneville, I never even made a pass on this motorcycle.
Yeah.
And typical racer.
So down to the wire.
Down the wire. We go to North Alabama to an undisclosed airport that we may or might not have permission to run on. And we're testing it, and it's just bad. It's giving me too much information, too slow. And so Patrick takes the guidance system home. We go home. He reprograms everything the next week. We meet back. So at this point, we're 2 weeks from Bonneville, and
you're still zigging and zagging.
Zigzagging. We're practicing. They're pushing me with a side-by-side, and I'm getting decent. So, because I'm the one testing this thing. I had zero money. I'm not like a rich guy, and I hired an engineering firm to go sort this thing out.
This is you're calling all your homies and like, let's do this. Yeah.
Let's do the stupidest stunt possible. This is it. We're in.
Yeah.
And so, so I get decent. So we crank it up. And the first time I went all the way down the runway, I looked like a drunk come home Saturday night, and I didn't go about 25 miles an hour, but I did it. And so that told me I could do it. So we practiced a little bit more, came home, packed every damn thing I could think of in a 6x12 trailer and 3 buddies, and I took off to Bonneville. And Jennifer flew out there and set up the course, did everything. The next day they gave me my official run. So I made the official run 55.331 miles per hour. Became the first blind man to race Bonneville.
That's pretty fast, without seeing that.
Yeah. And so this is one of the funny stories. So we're getting ready for make another pass because the next day, Phil Schuler and them had met Jacob, a little blind boy. We were already scheduled to leave to go to the U.S. Nationals to meet Jacob. So we only had that one day. And the officials come up. They said, we need to have a talk. We got problems. I said, okay. So the day before when I was testing, the Salt Lake City Tribune was there. They did an article on me on the front page of the Salt Lake City Tribune that morning. They said the Bureau of Land Management called, and obviously, you're required to have a driver's license to race Bonneville, and obviously blind man can't have a driver's license. We're in jeopardy of losing our lease and everything here. I said, well, I'm a racer. I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize everybody else, but I might have a solution. So I told Jennifer to go get my wallet. So we're sitting down, Tom Birkeland, badass land speed aero guy, sit next to me, and Delvine from the Bub Motorcycle Speed Trials. And I hand my driver's license, and Delvine sighed like she just beat a murder rap, like, and Tom goes, they're not expired. And he goes, what's class also? I said, that's just passenger car. And it says, corrective lenses required. And I slid down my sunglasses, and he goes, who in the hell am I to say that? So he sends it he faxed them to the BLM, and about 4 hours later, we'd given up, and he came back. He said, come on, let's go. So we tried to get in the lanes, and time ran out, so we didn't make any more passes. But when I was building the bike, I named it the Christopher Scott Special after my brother. And on the back, it's got an oversized push bar. And it's a tube with a cap. And I put his ashes in there.
Yeah.
And before I left, I spread his ashes to Bonneville. And so I came home. I enrolled at the Louisiana Center for the Blind, a 9-month training adult center program. Teaches cane travel, just everything, how to deal with blindness. So that I took a month break in 14, went back to Bonneville, and set my official FIM class record at 62.05 miles per hour for the 51 to 85 cc two-stroke single-cylinder cycle car class. So if anybody wants, they can go to YouTube and search Dan Parker Final, and there's a video of me racing Bonneville.
That's awesome.
So, and then by this time, I was already running all my machine shop equipment because I made a lot of parts for the bike, and we had moved from out in the country into town, and I lost a bunch of my equipment because I had to downsize from 2,000 square feet to 600 square feet, and and then I actually got a job teaching machine shop at a local high school as a part-time parapro. But the worst injury I have is my brain injury. It's not my blindness. I can deal with the blindness, but from all the neurofatigue and the headaches, I had to quit that job, and that's about the time I started the Corvette.
The Corvette project, yeah. Well, I just want to touch on a couple things because I think,
yeah, I might skip around.
Well, I really like that story because I think, and if obviously mostly men watch this, all men struggle with purpose, and we get really confused on what that purpose should be. We sometimes, I think if you're a little more in tune with God, you feel like that this purpose should be this divine, like crazy thing, where Jesus was a carpenter. He went to work every day. What it took for you to bring you out of that hole that you were in was really a simple purpose.
Yep.
And a stupid one, right? Right? Like we're gonna see how fast we could go on a motorcycle blind. But what happens is when men cast out purpose and they say it out loud, they typically have some friends that are around them that are stupid also, that are like, you know what? I can get behind that. And from something that's so simple, it brings you out of pits of darkness.
It's both ways. You're 100% right there, but then you have the people that are doubters, and the negatives, and that was one of my biggest battles. People that I thought were my best friends or talked about me, tell me how stupid I was, and my own family, and it's tough, because you got to have enough strength. I'm not saying I'm a strong person, but you got enough strength to say, I'm sticking to that purpose and to the end. Like I said, I know Jesus ain't going to tell you how. I love listening to Les Brown, and he'll say, he ain't going to tell you, the how is not the problem. You got to figure that out.
Yeah, that's on you. Yeah.
That's right. And that's where I was. But at that moment, it got my mind back thinking, and it got me quit thinking of thoughts of suicide and solving problems, how to make axle shafts and bending tubes for a frame. And this right arm is so bad shape. The top tube has a chest pad, and I had knee supports because I can't put zero weight on this arm, but still be able to feel and drive. So all the problems took away from my worries.
Yeah.
The problems I solved for the project took away my worries. Because we were in financial ruin. Jennifer, she didn't
Because
have
the way you made a living, you couldn't make a living
could
anymore.
make well. And part that I didn't share is, I was about to turn 42 years old. I didn't have any kids. Jennifer didn't have any kids, and we're like, well, if we're going to, we got to do it now. But if it happens, we weren't going to necessarily try. But if it happens, it happens. So I had just taken a job at a paper mill. I had 9 days before I started. I already had an employee number, orientation date, everything, the day of the wreck. So here I was, the first day on the job in 2012. I was going to make $34.50 an hour, with minimum requirement for the 2 shutdowns and some other stuff. Made about $115 a year, benefits, retirement, everything else. It's all gone.
Yeah.
To this date, I've lost over $1.5 million in income. I've lost, no retirement. So this is stuff that I battle with every day. But, you still have to stay. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in your purpose. With purpose, passion, and perseverance, you can get through a lot in life.
Yeah. Well, in the longer run, obviously, we all need money to survive, all this stuff, but purpose is so much deeper than financial, right? And with real purpose on the inside, you can tend to get through a lot of the financial struggles because you just won't quit.
And I ain't never been a quitter.
Yeah, and I feel that, like I remember when we started this place, the guy that we rented our first building from, so the shop's 10 years old yesterday, and the business, and the guy was like, he pulled my dad to the side and he's like, hey, if these boys can't pay the rent, will you pay it for them? And if he would have had anybody else to rent that first building to, he would have rented it to him. And, I think out of any good story, you have the people that doubt, and I think it's no different than, when you're talking about Noah having to build the ark, right? Like, God's just like, this is what you got to do, right? Just get it done. And then you had this whole group of people like, man, you're an idiot. Yep. And that story is...
Do you know how long the drought has been?
yeah, it's just over and over and over again. And all of humanity, it's and I tend to think that when people are telling you that you're stupid, you're typically on the right path. Mm-hmm. That's kind of been a good judge in my life, is that.
Because I've always been one to think way outside the box on things, and so I've never let people's opinion, sway me much,
Yeah. So you did the motorcycle deal. That worked fairly well, right?
Yeah.
And then you decided that you wanted to go back to Bonneville?
Yeah, so I decided, through this, I learned that Ben Felton in Australia had been 168 on a motorcycle. He had a follow rider with radios telling right and left. Well, Mike Newman in England had the Guinness World Record for the fastest car driven blindfolded. Same thing, a follow car radio at 200.5 miles per hour. He's in England. He's a true English gentleman. We're good friends, and me and Ben are friends. And so about 2017, I decided, I said, I'm going to go for that record. And I had a van left over. I sold it. I found a wreck, not a wreck, but a flood salvage C6 Corvette in Oklahoma City. No motor, no interior. And to say it had a rough life would be an understatement. And so my uncle,
even being a blind man, you can tell it was rough.
Oh, it was good. and so I called my uncle, who's a car guy in Oklahoma City, and my Uncle Nick went and looked at it. He says, it's ugly, but it'll make a car. It's straight. It ain't bent,
Yeah.
So I bought it for $4,000. Me and 3 buddies did a turn and burn in Oklahoma City and picked it up. And that's when it started. And again, I've busted my ass. I've made so many pins. I was starting the Corvette, and I made I had the pins. I would let the students make them at high school when I taught there, and I had some pin kits left over, and I made 5 pins one night, and I polished them. And I said, if anybody wants to donate $50 for the Corvette, I'll make you a pin and send it to you. Next morning, I woke up, I had 12 orders. And so that started that, and then just busted my ass trying to get sponsorship and had so many people to help me. And so at the end of 2019, the cage was in it. My buddy David Culpepper from South Georgia just painted it. One of my ex-employees come did the sheet metal in the back. Little art race cars done the cage, and it was getting close. And then the producers from Jay Leno's Garage reached out to me and said that they wanted to film an episode, but the latest they could film would be in February of 2020. And so that allowed me to get some corporate sponsors on board so I could finish. The motor wasn't finished. No wiring, no nothing.
There's a lot left.
A lot left. And so Joey Mark Racecars helped me a bunch. Mark Dalquist came from North Dakota, wired the car. And then when we rolled into Spaceport, the car had never been a quarter mile. It was under its own power. Again, last minute deals. And this was Friday. And on Sunday, I'm supposed to film Jay Leno's Garage. Well, Friday night, I'm at the driver's meeting giving a pep talk. And I made pins for it. It was a private invite-only event at Spaceport through the East Coast Time Association. I made pins for everybody. And while I'm there, the team's trying to work on the car, and they realize the GPS antenna is bad. So Jimmy, my buddy, he says, I don't care if I got cut the one out of Jennifer's rental car. He said, this ain't stopping us. But I had an AEM dash in the GPS for the AEM dash plugged up to Patrick's guidance system. So I went from a GPS antenna, this big on the roof to a little tiny one that was under the back glass, and it worked. So we were trying some new things because this was a totally different guidance system
than what the motorcycle.
Yeah, because the speed's involved. Well, I tried to make a pass, and it was just horrible. Well, then 2 cars ran off the end of the track. And so at 5 o'clock, Chris Lopez, the director of Spaceport, came to us and said, how you looking? Jim's like, not good. He said, what's up? He said, well, we hadn't any time. 2 cars pushed behind. It's 5 o'clock. They're fixing to shut down the facility. We're done for the day. We're supposed to film Leno first thing in the morning. Lopez goes, hell, just stay here all night. He says, I run this place. We got fire rescue. Here's the phone numbers. Here's a pass to get in out of the gate. Here's my number. If you got an emergency, you call me. So with my brain injury, I suffer from what's called neurofatigue. So I have to nap every day, especially when I get overwhelmed. So Jimmy knew I was tired. He said, just go sleep in the dually. I'll come get you. So Patrick sat in the rental car for about 3 hours and reprogrammed all kinds of stuff for the guidance system. Jimmy and them were pushing away from the pits not to wake me up. He was closing his eyes, trying to imagine. Now, this is nighttime. There's no lights on the runway, and the Corvette doesn't have headlights.
Why would it need headlights?
Yeah, they had rental cars riding beside them on the runway in the middle of the night. And so finally, about midnight, Jimmy comes and gets me and says, I think we got something you can work with. Let's try it. So about 2:30 in the morning, so Strutmasters was one of my sponsors. So you know how they make that perforated stuff like side of a van window where you can see out, but for like logos, but they can't see them? The whole front windshield was Strutmasters. So you could see out, I guess, pretty decent. So at 2:30 in the morning, us outrunning rental cars, I went 116 miles an hour, and Jimmy could barely see. So listen, we got to stop. This is,
sketchy.
This is getting sketchy. So we got about an hour sleep. We're rolling in the next morning. Leno's crew come rolling in like President Trump, all the vans and everything else. And so we're strapping in. There's film people everywhere. And Steve Strupp, who's my shotgun pilot, because the Corvette's got 2 steering wheels. So while I'm testing all this guidance system, if there's an emergency, somebody could take over. And so me and Steve are strapping in. I said, you see that steering wheel? I said, don't touch it unless you're fearful of your life. I got this. He said, okay. So he just sat there calm. And Steve's so laid back. So we start rolling off. I'm easing into it. And I get settled in. I put it down. And so Patrick's in the command center. He's watching live telemetry. So he said when he sees 120 miles an hour come up, he said when he sees 130, he goes, Dan's going for it. When he saw 140, he said, Dan's really going for it. I went through the traps, 153.8 miles per hour. That made me the fastest blind man in America. And that was the first full pass on the car on 153. We filmed the show. Everything went great. Then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So again, everything stopped as we all know. So in 2021, the National Federation of Blind reached out to me wanting to go break the record on the 10-year anniversary of the Blind Driver Challenge, where they built a car with Virginia Tech that a blind person can drive. Haptic feedback across their hand tells them how much to steer up and down their back.
Really sophisticated.
Very sophisticated. So we were set to try to set the record in November. Steve got COVID, and he was on the vent for like 8 weeks. A miracle he lived. So we rolled it to 2022, and he wasn't in shape. So Tim from the Loring Time Association did the timing. Jason White, who's just been one of my great friends, supporters through all this, I met through land speed racing. He's got the world's fastest C6. He's been 269. He's rebuilding it right now, going for 300 next year. He was riding shotgun with me for Spaceport. So in 2022, we rolled in there. The first day had 50-mile-an-hour winds. I didn't make any passes. So during this time, I knew that I needed a way to practice. So I bought a C4 rough Corvette, built a second guidance system. Patrick would fly his plane to my house. We get it in my test dummy, that was what it was called. The license plate was TSTDUMY. And we'd go to Fink City drag strip. I'd practice a couple hours and he'd try and go home. So we took test dummy and the C6 out there. So Patrick and I would go out there with 40-mile-an-hour crosswinds on day 2. I could keep it in a 10-foot wide path over a mile and a half.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, land speed stops racing at 17 miles an hour. And so I got in the race car. I went 158 my first pass, I think 180 my second pass. And I spec'd the torque converter too tight, and it just wasn't taking the gas. Well, day 3, as of noon, the last day, I had not broke 200 miles an hour. And there's pictures I share down there. And I go to the left front wheel of my dually, away from everybody, and I just leaned up against that dually wheel and I prayed. There's pictures of me just sitting there. I had no idea nobody was taking pictures. And I prayed. I said, God, if you don't want me to have this record, this is your will. I accept this. All I ask is next time I crank up that Corvette, we'll throw every connecting rod out the block to give my team a reason we failed. I said, let me tote this burden out this gate, not them. And a few minutes later, Jason come got me. He says, suit up. I think we got something solved. Went our next pass. I went 205. And I was having to fight the crap out of it. I have a dirt trackers use a steering quickener box. When I designed the car, I would turn one around backwards to make my ratio slower.
Slower, yeah.
It was a little bit of a bind. So I told the team, I felt some bump steer. I felt a bump. When I did, it was moving me around. So we hauled it back to the pits. I told them, take it up, take the 4 wheels, tires off of it. I put 3 rounds of compression in the shocks, put the moon disc on it. Me and Jason worked on the steering. By this time, it was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and my lease is up at 5. We go out there, my first pass, 2:10. You got an hour to prep that thing, turn around. When you go for a Guinness record, you make one pass, within 1 hour, you got to go through the traps.
You got to do it
the other
again.
direction.
Yeah.
So wind helps you one way, it hurts you the other. And well, I didn't know it. I said, I'm not going to risk me screwing this up. I didn't take my helmet off. None of my communications. I didn't take my seat belts off. I just sat there, and I got molded earbuds, so I can't hear anything. And so I have a cooling cart that hooks to the water tank. It doesn't have a radiator. It's got a 15-gallon water tank, this long, slow heat sink. So the cooling cart lost prime. Well, I didn't know it. They drained it, and I was trying to fill it from another reservoir we had. So the team was funneling water for cups and Dixie cups and water bottles, and they got that 15 gallons. Jason got in the car with 12 minutes left on the clock and went through the traps at 2:12 and some change, the backup run. And so my official Guinness record is 211.043 miles per hour for the fastest car driven blindfolded. And we brought that record home to America. And that was,
And you didn't even need a blindfold.
didn't even need a blindfold. But I blacked out my visor and I put the NFB logo on the front. And that was March 31st, 2022, exactly 10 years to the day of the wreck, almost within an hour of 10 years to the day of the wreck.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy.
People ask me, what does it feel like driving 200? I said, you have no idea. You're going fast with molded earbuds. I can't hear anything. I obviously can't see anything. I said, when I pull the parachute and it blossoms, I know that it's good. So I have, Jason found me these carbon paddle shifters from Italy. And so I have a carbon, my left one is parachute, right one's talking to Patrick. I can deploy the parachute with my pinky. I think every race car should have them. You don't have to go search for nothing. If you're in a jam, you can deploy any point. But everybody's asking me how it feels like, so I finally came up with a description. Imagine being strapped into the electric chair, blindfolded, doing operating a video game, knowing if you hit the rumble strips, they're going to throw the switch on the chair. That's how nerve-wracking it is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It is 10 times harder than driving a Pro Mod, I promise you.
Even with a clutch.
Yeah. Even the old timers still use the third pedal. Yeah. And it's an extreme exercise and concentration like no other.
So I got a question. Would you change it now? Would you, if you could go back in time and not be blind, would you change it?
None of us wants to go blind. There's polls, people rather have cancer than go blind. It's the fearful, but blindness is an inconvenience. Would I still like to be able to see Jennifer? Yes. Would I still like to have my business and racing? Yes. But I've also known that, I've accomplished more blind than I ever did sighted. I do know that.
Yeah.
It's opened up so many opportunities for me. Right now, I'm working with Auburn University and Boston University on 2 bicycle projects for the blind. I proposed to Jennifer on the Steve Harvey show. You can go search Steve Harvey, Blind Man Proposes. I'm going to go ahead and give you, it comes with a tissue warning. It will make your allergies act up. And CBS News, you can search YouTube, Steve Hartman, Dan Parker. Just touching a little video about Ted, his little blind nephew. So, I know that I was chosen for this. I know that it's allowed me to have opportunities to continue breaking barriers for the blind. I know I have more work in front of me. I've started my charity. It's called blindfaith.org. I just Saturday got my official IRS letter in the mail that I'm an official nonprofit now.
That's awesome.
And so I'm hoping, in the future, obviously we need donations. So my bicycle projects, the one from Auburn is their 3-wheel low-sitting recumbents. A sighted person rides the lead bike, and then my bike follows it autonomously. And then the one from Boston University is full autonomous technology. We'll put in an address and go there. So my goal is to have a fleet of these bikes and be able to travel to like a motorsports park and have a track day for blind people to get out, be able, experience riding a bike solo, without a tandem bike, and then I'm hoping maybe down the road that this will lead to opportunities for maybe something to be able to produce for the blind, because sadly, one of the first things I learned about the blind is the unemployment rate in America is 70% for the blind. It's 99% worldwide. So most blind people stay at home all day. We don't get exercise. We don't get to socialize. And so these will open up opportunities for jobs, transportation to a job, socialization, exercise, And so I'm hoping that down the road for what I'm doing that maybe they can be produced for other blind people to have as transportation, because, with the unemployment rate, we can't afford a Tesla, a self-driving car. And with all the regulations, there's no telling how far that will actually be in production. But, a self-driving bicycle is something realistic. It's outside the box, but it's something realistic in today's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we talked before on camera, before we were on camera, it's if you can get in a car right now and it tell you where you can go. Like, I didn't think about I didn't realize the unemployment rate, like that.
70% in America.
Wow.
It's tough. With technology, there's so much that people can do, but having an employer that will take a chance on you and, have the adaptations are minimal in today's world. You know, my iPhone, it speaks to me. You know, I post on Facebook, you know, label pictures, post pictures, surf the internet, emails, and I'm gonna call myself about a 5 out of 10 as far as technology. The really smart people, you know, they can, you know, create PowerPoints and everything else. And so the technology today, there's so many blind people that have so many skills, and a blind person will be so dedicated because they appreciate their job. But, you know, it's just the reality of the world still.
Well, I mean, and too, I mean, if you look at, I mean, how many people have jobs that just talk on the phone? You know, like, I mean, that's a huge, you know, that's a huge thing. And you don't even have, I mean, I think what you're working on is so good, though. I think the people just can't be at home all the time. Like, I get the work at home deal, but like, man, people need community. You know, they need to go out and meet people and hang out.
And you know, it's reality. You know, my 4 walls are a 50 by 150 piece of land. You know, 95% of the time, because that's where I'm at every day. You know, I'm in my house. You know, and it's tough. You know, and you know, I'm blessed. I have my shop, but at the same token, that, you know, having a place to go and get out and socialize. I'm an extrovert. Jennifer's a complete introvert. You know, but you know, I want to get out and see people and meet people and, you know, talk.
Hang out.
Yeah, hang out. Yeah.
No, I get that, man. Well, I want to show people your pins if you want to get one out.
Yeah.
And it's one of my. Oh, gotcha. This is one of my prized possessions. All the boys in the shop have one.
So, I brought. So I brought something I wanted to show you. These. Give me 30 minutes. I'll find it. I'm missing a zipper here somewhere. I'm missing. Open it. There's a box there.
Oh, I see the box.
Okay. Yeah, open that up. The zippers are kicking my butt. There's like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, there's all your pieces.
Yeah.
There's your plate.
Okay.
And then there's your pin.
So during COVID, you know, the whole world was pissed at China, and I set out. I was going to design 100% design a pen and 100% hand machine every part by myself. And so this is the stand that it comes with, and this starts with 3/8 material. And I make these verticals, and I notch them, and then I drill the bolt pattern. And I got a jig on my table, and I put that plate in, and I use a wood router, and I go around that with a wood router with a carbide bit to round over the edges. So that's the base.
This is really nice.
And then, so these pins are 7 hand machine parts. It's a bolt action mechanism. I'm not sure what the camera can see. So it's got a bolt action slot and a detent. So you slide that down and over, and the ink cartridge comes in and out. I prototype every piece. I hand machine every piece of this. So this, I'm gonna take it apart, and you can show. So it uses a Fisher Space Pen cartridge that was designed for the Apollo missions in the 60s. And
that's really cool.
You know, it'll write in space. So if you ever go to space,
if you ever find yourself in a predicament in space,
I'm not. So these clips start life as a 7/8 piece of hexagon, and it ends up. There's one in that bag you might show.
Yeah.
And it takes me 2 hours just to machine that clip.
You kind of got them in various stages.
Yeah, I brought the one that's bigger.
Yeah,
that shows you
that's the big one there.
Yeah, so that's I machined the clip part first, and at this point is still the 7/8 hex. So I have the hole drilled, and then I start off machining this part all the way down. Then I turn it on its top side, and I have to narrow it because it's a little wider to the dimension. Then I turn on its side and machine that relief in there to make the little just the spot for the that touches your shirt or whatever. Then I have to come back and
I think that's the last piece here. Here's your middle piece.
Okay. Yep. So then it has I rough it out and it's got a hex. Well, then this is what it ends up. So it's a flat, a 180, and a flat. So I machine and I do all my setups myself in my machine shop. My website and Facebook page is The Blind Machinist. So theblindmachinist.com. So I have a 5C spin fixture. I have this set up. So I go to center point of the hole. They have a stop on my 5C. I turn it 180 degrees, lock it back down. Then I go the finish way. So that machine's a flat, a 180 radius, and another flat in one machining step. And so that finishes it. Then I have to round it off by filing it and everything. But all these parts, I machine by myself. I do all my setups. A good friend of mine, Mr. Harris, he modified my spin fixtures. So one of them has 6 positions, one has 4. But that's the only outside help that somebody helps me with on these things.
That's awesome.
And
I got you.
you know, they and so I make those, and I'm really proud of them because
they're beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful, man.
As a piece of machine, everybody's a machinist and car people. We understand threads and accuracy and everything else. And there's 7 hand machine parts, just a pen. The only thing I don't machine is the ink cartridge, the spring, and that tiny little bolt for the bolt action mechanism.
Yeah, you can. So if you want one of these pens, you can go to theblindmachinist.com.
Yep. And they see all my other pens I have, my slims and my executives also.
Yeah, I think which ones we got?
You have the executives, y'all.
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all bought some executives.
Yeah, I gave them. We bought them for Christmas for all the boys in the shop because it comes with. This one's a little different, but the one we have is a wood box.
Yeah, wood box, and they come laser engraved. It says this pen was designed by Dan Parker, the Blind Machinist, and my life motto: you can make excuses or make it happen.
Yeah. So if the boys are having a bad day, I tell them, hey man, pick up one of Dan's pens.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah. Go look at that a little bit. If you're complaining about something, my man Dan's down there can't see nothing making these pens. How long does it take you to make one?
So the Slims executives, I do them in batches of generally 35 because my Cerakote guy, I made all the fixtures to hold everything, so he likes doing batches of 16, so I try to do 32 at a time. It takes me probably about a week and a half to do 35, of the Slim executives. And then those, the Made in Americas, I don't even know how many hours it is. They, like I said, it takes 2 hours just to make that clip. And I try to make like 20 or 30 nibs or, then 20, 30 bodies. I really busted my butt one time, and I think I made 15 in a month. But I was out in the shop a bunch.
Yeah. Well, I hope that please go to his website and buy these pens. And I hope that we overwhelm him. You sell so many of them, you don't know. You're just out there just, but give him time, right? He's a blind man making pens. If it takes a little longer to get your order, don't worry about it.
I brought some today, but anyway, I have about 120 or 30 of the Slims executives
in stock, ready to go.
Yeah.
All right, that's tight.
We're out of the Made in Americas. Last year, I went on a mission to try to help heal my brain, and I found about hyperbaric therapy. And I had some people that donated generously to allow me to get my own chamber. And
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And so I had some Made in America parts here and there. So anyway, I made a lot of people Made American pen and sent it to them. It was a sincere thank you for them donating to my chamber.
Do you think now, like with everything you experienced, like good relationships really feel even sweeter than they did before?
They do, because man, you just sadly you learn about the bad relationships, and you look back and you see people's traits that maybe you should have got rid of them, or they should have, parted ways in life. But then it brings the sincere people in your life that really wants to help you. They want to see you succeed, and they see the purpose and the missions and some of the stuff I do, and that's the beautiful side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always another side of the coin.
That's right. Yeah, there is. There's just some great people, and I've been blessed to have a lot of people support me, and I have some people at the house that that sometimes some of the people that you would expect the least will be the ones that step up the most.
Yeah.
And that's been just just some beautiful things. I got a friend of mine, Marty Flournoy, at home. He's a commercial real estate person. He's helped me with a Corvette. He don't even want his name on the car.
Yeah.
I got another guy, Sam Hewitt, at home. He his grandson JR had that Cadillac from B&B a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
The limited drag rail car.
Yeah.
And my air conditioner went out in my house. Sam put air conditioner in the house. I called him and said, Sam, how much do I owe you? You're breaking up.
Yeah.
Just that type of people that step up to help you out of sincerity and because they're a good person. That's the beauty side of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's next? What are you working on now? Where do you want to go?
So, trying to grow blindfaith.org. Hopefully by this time next year, both bicycle projects will be a whole lot further along. Car-wise, I have the car for sale.
Your C6.
My C6. I don't want to have to, but I think I need to try to fund Blind Faith. It sucks, but it's just life. But then racing-wise, Matt Frost from Rocky Mountain Race Week has given me permission to participate in a race at Rocky Mountain Race Week. So a friend of mine gave me a 93 LX hatch the other day, four-cylinder car. And so I'm hoping in a year I'm going to name it the Braille Snail because it's not going to be fast. I've done proven I can do that. If it runs 15s, I'm happy. But I want to drill the whole body and use smash rivets as Braille. And I want blind kids to come up and read it. This is the Braille Snail driven by Dan Parker. Under the hood is, a 4.8 LS or whatever. Then this car is burgundy with weld wheels, and I want to mini tub it. I know what I want it to look like. I want to mini tub it. I had two visions. Us old folks, we grew up in the 80s, and we liked our Celine Mustangs back in the day.
Yeah.
And I thought about making a white Celine, tribute with white Celine wheels, but I think I really want to do a mini tub, a show neck 8-inch nose, Cobra side skirts, maybe a Cobra rear valance, and probably a drag wing, and
well, we make drag wings and we make all the rear suspension, so
right.
Yeah, we're good.
So
you're good on that.
And then I want to mini tub it, and just have something look cool, And
I think it's a cool idea to take the, I have a couple buddies that my friend Benny's been on here. He's quadriplegic, and he drag races dirt cars.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friend Poland, that's kind of always with us. He's in a wheelchair, and man, when you get close to people, you realize how much of the world is actually against them, but the world doesn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like just going out to dinner with Benny, making sure that wherever we choose, that he can get in and out real quick. Because a lot of people don't think, the restaurant may or may not think about that or whatever, And I think that's so cool to think about, well, how can we include this person that can't see by putting Braille on the car so that they can be a part of, knowing what it is.
That's right, yeah. And if it's there, no matter where I'm at, if me and Jennifer want to take it to dinner or whatever, somebody else sees it, walk up and feel it and read it,
Yeah.
That's what it's there for, And I've been blessed between Delvine and Dennis at the Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trials and Steve Struck, Tim Kelly, everybody and Matt Frost has given me permission, to today's lawsuit world, first thing anybody's worried about is being sued.
Yeah.
So when, come try to do what I'm trying to do and done, that's the easier answer is no. To say, no, you can't do it. But I've always worked with them, and they know that I'm professional, and I'm going to try to do the right thing, and I'm not going to do anything stupid. I might do some crazy, but I ain't going to do anything stupid. I'm not going to jeopardize them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've always tried to do. And I want that to open up doors for other blind people in motorsports or other blind people on these bicycle projects down the road. Because I know if I screw it up today, the next guy in line is going to have a tougher time.
Yeah.
But if I do the right thing today, the next guy in line is going to have an easier time.
Yeah. Well, like you said, even you were showing me your Ray-Bans that you have, the Meta Ray-Bans, if you guys have ever seen that. And, he had them on, and they were telling him about the room and stuff. And for what them cost, for what, it's unreal. Like they're $350, but that, what'd you say? They use like a similar thing used to be like 4,000 or something?
Yeah, the deal that I proposed, the camera device that I proposed to Jennifer on the Steve Harvey show was $4,500. And so here we are, 6 years later, and you get almost the exact same technology wearing on a, decent looking set of Ray-Bans for $350. I'm out in the shop and I picked up a gallon jug today, and I didn't know what it was, and it said, this is the label says Simple Green. It's a cleaning agent, and it's reading to me what's on the package, and that could be for a prescription. That could be for, cooking instructions on a pizza, reading your thermostat in the house. So many little things that are challenging, for the blind. When I went to the blind school, me and my buddy Paul, we'd go grocery shopping. Well, one morning they put all of our pizzas in the same bag. And so I FaceTimed my buddy, and he was telling us which one was which. And his brother was in the car almost crying. He says, the littlest things, I had no idea how much of a challenge they are.
Yeah. Puts it in perspective.
It puts in perspective. Yeah. I don't remember seeing any blind people in public before I went blind. Obviously there are. There's 10 million of us in America. But there's little things, and I'm hoping what I'm doing opens up opportunities, whether it's employment, whatever. I hope I'm making life easier for the next blind people in life, because the ones before me made it easier for me.
Yeah. What's your advice to, let's just say, people that can see, that are and you see a blind person? What's the appropriate? How do you include them?
Never grab them. Never approach them. Say, "Hey, my name is Dan. Can I have a conversation with you?" Or whatever, and just talk to them. Most people want to walk up and yell. We're not hard of hearing.
Yeah, your hearing's probably really good. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you see a blind person,
hi, Dad. Yeah.
If you see a blind person in public, and I'm in the intersection fixing to walk across the intersection, don't freak out, because if they're there, they got the proper training. Don't grab them. Just walk up and say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so. Do you need any help?" If not, or start a conversation. We're just like everybody else. We just want to be treated like everybody else, And
if you don't like what we're saying, you'll hit us with your thing.
That's right. That's yep. And it's society's opinion of what we can and can't do is drastically different than what we can and can't do. That blind school I went to, Louisiana Center for the Blind, to graduate, you have to do 3 drop routes. So imagine they drive you around in a van for about 15 minutes, so you can't mental map you off, and they drop you off, and you got to find your way back to the school, and you can't answer directions, and you can't use your phone. I got dropped off 2 miles away, and I made it back in an hour and 15 minutes. Then the final thing is you got to do a 10-kilometer walk and stop in certain locations to get business cards to prove you were there. It took me 6.5 hours. I did it. And they'll shadow you to make sure that, they'll sometimes have sighted people, because most of my instructors were blind, but they'll have sighted people shadow you to see if you're cheating or not. And it's tough. It's tough. The school's 3/4 mile away from apartments. Once you learn how to walk the apartment route, you get kicked off the bus. You walk to and from school every day, sleet, snow, whatever. Then you have your travel assignments for 2 hours every day. And so one of the streets you have to cross every day going to the apartment back is a 4-lane street with no stop signs. So you're up there sitting there and you're listening to that traffic, it's silent, and you commit, and they tell you, don't do like the squirrel. Don't go out in the middle of the street, go back and forth. When you commit, you stay committed. And, it's about building confidence, it's.
That's pretty, I mean, they're like very much like, suck it up, buttercup.
Yes,
We're
sir,
like, yeah, you're
they,
going. Yeah.
They don't like it when I refer to it, but I tell people it's blind boot camp. It's going to make a man out of you,
Yeah.
And some of the most amazing people, there was a lady there, and sadly she just passed away last week. So she was in a wheelchair, she had one leg, and she was blind. She lived 2 miles away from the apartments, and somebody has to be on apartment duty every weekend. Sometimes she would do it. She didn't work for the school, but she went through the school. She would push herself in her wheelchair, blind, carrying her backpack to stay the weekend with a white cane 2 miles to the apartments.
It's unreal.
Can you imagine that? I mean, that's crazy. They said when she was going through training, she had an electric wheelchair at that time, and a few times she tumbled over in the grass, and JD, the woodshop teacher, would come get her upright. He says, well, you want to go back to school? No, I got to finish my route. And so when you're around other blind people like that, when I first went to school, they told me the stuff I had to do to graduate. I said, that's impossible. There ain't no way. And I tell everybody, I cried the first night I went. I cried the last day I was there. Because the first night you went, you were scared. You had no idea what you was about to, this challenge was about to take on. But then when you graduated, you realize how far you come, and then all the people you met. And Ruston, Louisiana is a little small town, only about 30,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. They don't freak out when blind people's there. You walk in a restaurant, hey, so-and-so, come this way. And they'll keep talking so you can follow them,
That's really the appropriate way to keep talking. Don't grab people, just keep talking.
Just keep talking. Or like my buddy used to just jiggle his keys. I worked at the high school. We'd go somewhere, he just jiggle his keys, and so, we can adapt very quick. Most people, you just got to give us just a few minutes, a little extra time, and we can do it.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm really bad with verbal directions, so I'm probably while you're here, if I touch you, it's just because I'm not great with my right and my left. I'm gonna run you into something, Daddy.
Jennifer's gonna kill me if she listens to this podcast. So the first year we went to Bonneville, we're going to Indy, and we get out of the hotel and we walk all the way down the hall, and she goes in the hall and she goes, there ain't no elevator. And I knew we'd passed it because I knew there was one there. And I reached up, I said, you're still blonde, aren't you? and she got her right and left forever mixed up. Now she's pretty good. She got about 90% right now. Before about 90% wrong. But it ain't easy because, a lot of times if you're looking at me, you're telling me to go right. Your right is,
it's
is
backwards.
My left.
Yeah, Brad should definitely be the one to take you around the shop and keep you under control. You don't want me doing that, Dan. We'll be in bad shape.
If you can fly a drone or a remote control car or something like that, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, you can really help Dan out.
Yeah.
You'll be all right. That's really cool. Well, you got any other thing you want to share?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, man. I love what y'all are doing up here. Congrats on 10 years.
Thank you.
That's a huge accomplishment. I had a small chassis shop. I know the struggles. I was telling Brad earlier, and I sucked at business, but I love the craft. I love being able to make things in my hand. And, I used to haul my Outlaw 10.5 Mustang in the back of a school bus. I had a school bus that I cut. As soon as it wrapped around, I cut it out. I dovetailed the frame, made my own ramp door, and loaded it in an angle. And, I was coming home from Phoenix City drag strip one night, and I turned on the lights. And the doors open because they had no air conditioner. And the guy says, "Is that a race car in the bus?" I said, "Yeah, I watched too much Monster Garage." But I love what y'all are doing, man. And I appreciate the faith that y'all have, the faith that y'all share with people. That as men, me as I talked about, we're intimidated sometimes by it. But what y'all are doing is special, and y'all really touch a lot of people for the right reasons. Y'all are doing the right things, and stay the course.
Thank you. Well, yeah, that when you were talking about, having to go home after being blind, becoming blind, and the small chassis shop thing, like I I can feel that anxiety,
Oh,
right? You know, that's a lot of why we've, you know, changed our direction, because I love building things. I love being involved with my hands, but you just get tired of working for people.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you're like, I want to do it the way I want to do it, and we're really blessed that the parts thing is really taking off for us, and now we're, you know, we don't work on many cars, and we probably never will again, just because
Yeah,
it's
I got a friend of mine here doing chassis business at home. I said, man, go industrial. I said, you know, you're so much better off. And he doesn't even work on race cars anymore. He has his own industrial fabrication business. He's doing great. He's very successful. And it's tough because somebody else's hobby is paying your bills.
yeah,
They don't understand that, you know, and it's tough. But on the same token, you know, I don't know if you ever read the book. It's called How to Build a Car by Adrian Newey. He was an aerodynamics guru. He's the one that made the Red Bull so successful. And Ayrton Senna got killed in one of his cars, and he talks about it. You know, and the other side of that is, you know, that I see now. And I always try to really build safe cars, but you know, somebody else. I don't want to say stupidity, but sometimes stupidity, but sometimes somebody else's tragic can be tough to swallow too.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And you know, it's, but yet you still want to see people succeed and go fast and win rounds and win races and championships. You know, so it's tough. It's a tough business that people have no idea how time and labor consuming it is. You know?
Yeah, it can really snowball.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and I see a lot of your posts, and I think I'm going to have you come up again. I know it's a little bit of, I like having you here, but yeah, I'd really love to, and we won't do it today, but just jumping into the safety side of drag racing, and, you know, because we all think, you know, it's not going to happen to me, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, obviously it happened to you, right? And, you know, your life has been forever changed from that. And you've learned, you know, you learned stuff from that. And I think in drag race, all racing, we're all reactive, right? It is because of this, now we're going to do this.
Stuff today, somebody else paid the price for it.
Yeah.
You know, Hans device, Dale Earnhardt paid the price for the Hans device.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's no different than like what you're talking about, you know, for blind people. You're trying to forge a path so that the guy behind you is a little better. And, you know, we want people to pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
You know, it's very important. So, but definitely go to theblindmachinist.com. That's where you can get all of Dan's stuff. Please go buy pins. They are so sick. They make awesome presents. And then the Blind Faith is your new thing.
Yeah, blindfaith.org. And I think Blind Faith is spaced out like Blind Space Faith.
I'll put a thing on the screen. I'll make
Facebook,
sure.
On Facebook, and the Blind Machinist on Facebook, and Tragedy Triumph Racing. I got so many Facebooks trying to keep up with, but I appreciate, you know, anybody following, liking, sharing. You know, everybody knows the social media world is so much of today, and it's tough being a one-man blind man, you know, because when you see me post, I'm the one posting. Nobody else does it. You know, I have a Bluetooth keyboard. I have my pictures labeled. You know, I can set my phone in your lap, and I can create a post sharing a picture from my camera roll without even touching the phone. You know, I've tried to push myself to be able to do that. And
I love when you because you comment our stuff, and then sometimes you'll say, "Hey, Jason, can you explain what this is?" I love when you do that.
You know, and I get a lot of kickback. You know, I'll ask questions. Somebody say something. Why this? I said, "Listen, I'm blind." You know, and sometimes I'll say, "Hey, for the blind kid in the room, can you explain it?" But one of the dumbest things I get is when I make videos and somebody says, "If he's blind, why is he wearing safety glasses?" I'm like, a piece of metal in the eye is still going to hurt. You know, think about this. You know, I'm still going to have to go to the doctor and get it out. You know, so sometimes people post before they need to.
Yeah.
I catch.
Yeah, your eyes are still there.
Yeah. A scratch on the eye is still going to hurt. You just can't see it coming. You know, and, but people just, you know, sometimes
stupid.
Some people haven't hit post before they need to.
Oh, that's really funny. gotta find humor in it, or
Oh,
you just you might start killing people. That's funny. So, well, we appreciate you guys watching. I hope you made it to the end, just because I love what Dan has to say. And well, actually, his bicycles are getting delivered here today, so we're gonna get to see them. I'm excited about that. And then, yeah, he's gonna hang around. We got men's group tonight, so Dan and Rex are gonna hang out for that. And yeah, it's gonna be a great night. So we appreciate you guys watching. Go find Dan on all of his 17 Facebook pages. And yeah, make sure you keep up with what he's doing. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.